Welcome back to Lead Full Circle. My name is Graham Adderholt, and it is an absolute honor today to be able to talk to our special guest. And he is going to have so many valuable points that we can learn from and take away and apply to us as leaders at work and at home with our family. But today we have the privilege to hear from Ernie Johnson Jr. If you don't know Ernie Johnson Jr., here's a little bit of background information about Ernie Johnson. Ernie Johnson Jr. is the longtime host of TNT's Inside the NBA, and 8 times he has been honored with National Sports Emmys as the top studio host in television. Best known for his work alongside Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, and Kenny Smith, Johnson's resume also includes March Madness, Major League Baseball, the PGA Championship, and the Olympics. Johnson was inducted into the Sports Broadcasting Hall of Fame in 2023, a fitting honor for a career defined by excellence and authenticity. He is also a New York Times best-selling author. His memoir, Unscripted, The Unpredictable Moments That Make Life Extraordinary, reflects his philosophy of embracing life's unexpected BlackBerry moments. Through his work and his words, Johnson continues to inspire generations with his professionalism, integrity, and humanity. Well, I want to welcome Ernie Johnson Jr. to Lead Full Circle. And Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for taking time to join us today.
Now, okay, let's get it started the right way. You're not going to call me Mr. Johnson.
I had a feeling that was coming.
You call me Ernie, call me EJ, call me whatever you do. But hey, it's my pleasure, Graham, to be your guest.
Well, thank you so much. So I was going to dive right in. And, you know, most people, I'm sure, recognize you from the broadcasting world on TNT with Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith. I'm sure there's never a dull moment in that setting. But just such an awesome environment to be around. I'm sure each day y'all are working together. And the first question ties along with that is that you get to work with some of the brightest and biggest personalities in sports. But with your role there, what does your leadership in that type of setting with those personalities and just how much wisdom they have with the game of basketball, what does your leadership mean to you in an environment like that?
I think it's it's a situation where everybody knows their role, Graham, because I didn't play. I played college baseball. I didn't play NBA basketball. So you have to realize that, number one, that these are the guys with NBA championships and Hall of Fame credentials, and they've been in every conceivable situation on a basketball court. So my responsibility is getting them the ball where they're going to excel, and they're going to pick apart every situation. It's not like, look, people at home don't care. If there's 1.3 seconds to go, they don't care what I think. Right. They care what these guys who have been there think. So knowing your role is really important. And I think, I'm there to facilitate. I'm there to spark conversation. It's that kind of thing. And so getting us from point A to point B to point C, and knowing the questions to ask that are going to elicit the best responses. I mean, I can tell you, after working with Kenny and Chuck for more than 20 years and with Shaq for the last 13, when you're around each other that long, you kind of get the feeling, just from a look in their eyes, where they're going to go. And also, I know that, look, if I see a quote from some coach somewhere that I can work into the conversation, I know Chuck will respond to it one way and Shaq will respond to it another way. So folks call me like a traffic cop, but I'm a rogue traffic cop because I want to wave Shaquille into the intersection and have Chuck broadside him. That's right. So yeah. I'm probably not a very good traffic cop. I would probably be on desk duty.
Yeah, that's good. So tying in still with the broadcasting theme, I'm sure there's a lot more people involved in just the day-to-day operations instead of just not of seeing you guys each time on TV. So how does that influence you as a leader, just knowing so many different values are appreciated from everybody involved?
Well, I mean, first on leadership, it's you don't lead with what you say, you lead with what you do. Okay. I mean, you can try to play that game and say, I'm the leader here and we're going to do this and we're going to do this. But unless you're able to act that out in front of them, people aren't going to follow. So
Mhm.
I think that's the key to leadership. Leadership can be kind of a nebulous um, term. Sometimes it's like, you know it when you see it, when somebody's really a good leader, uh, and they don't, to me, good leaders aren't hung up on their titles. They aren't hung up on that position. One of the best leaders I've had is Tim Kiley, our producer, who was the best in the world at saying, "Look, I'm the producer of the show, but I'll take ideas from everybody." You know,
Mhm.
so he wasn't so gung ho on his title that he said, "No, I'll produce this show. I don't need any help." Good leaders listen.
Mm.
Good leaders incorporate good ideas from everybody in the ranks. And so you talk about how many folks were involved in the show. You can easily get carried away with looking at it and say, "Oh, those four guys," and miss the other 55 or 60 who have a role in that show. You know,
Mhm.
graphics to highlights, et cetera, et cetera. And so, and if one of them is off his game or her game, it's going to impact the show.
Mm.
So I think we all have that kind of feeling that, look, this is not about us. This is about this whole team. And so we've been fortunate enough on Inside the NBA through the years to win a lot of Emmys for our show. And because everybody feels valued on that show, everybody feels like they won it. So
Mhm.
I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. So at Lead Full Circle, we talk a lot about work and our roles at work and how, leadership is often mentioned a lot at work and in different settings at work, but we never want to leave the leadership conversation out of our homes with our families. So today, over the next few minutes, we'll talk a lot about our family and how the importance of leadership, how so important that is within our homes and our families. So I want to start with your dad, who played in the Major League Baseball for the Braves, won the World Series in 1957, also an unbelievable broadcaster. So I just wanted to ask you about him. What are some leadership lessons you took away from your dad?
You know, the best advice my dad ever gave me was be yourself.
Hmm.
And that sounds very simple. And so, oh, really, what great advice. But it really was. That
Mm-hmm.
was tremendous advice, um, to not try to be somebody you're not. And especially in the job that we do, and
Right.
the job of um, broadcasting, where some people feel like, oh, okay, I'm on the air now. I have to sound like somebody else. Um, yeah, I don't even know if you can see it or not over my shoulder, but there's a picture of me and my dad from like 1959 when his career
Mm.
was winding down. Um, and like the greatest things he taught me were like, look, just because you have this cool job, it doesn't make you special. Um, and that, feel blessed to be doing what you want to do and what you get
Mm.
to do. And I think all of those things, they play into leadership. Uh, when folks see that you are grateful for the job that you have and that you don't take anything for granted and that you value the folks who work with you, that's leadership. And so I think he was, it's not like he ever sat me down a lot and gave me a bunch of do this, do this, do this, do this, but I watched him,
Mm.
and you can learn a heck of a lot just by watching somebody.
Yeah.
And used to go to the ballpark with him when he was broadcasting Braves games and just watch how he did his work.
Mm.
Um, how he would, one of the best examples of leadership in that booth back in the day, he was the voice of the Braves, and Skip Carey one day came out of commercial and said, "Well, we're going to the top of the seventh, and now back to the voice of the Braves, Ernie Johnson."
Wow.
So when they went to the bottom of the seventh, my dad looked at Skip and said, "Hey, if it's okay with you, we're all the voice of the Braves." That's
Mm.
leadership.
That's right.
Okay, don't get carried away with the title. Just be that person that people are looking at and saying, "That's where I want to go. That's what I want my career to look like."
Mm. That's so good, so powerful, and so true, so true. So you got a book, Unscripted, and you talk about an unbelievable book that has so many life lessons within this, and some things I just wanted to bring up before we talk just a little bit about that. Faith, your faith is kind of a central theme within this book, but also just with how you live your life. And it's not just something you preach, it's what you live out. So how does faith shape the way you lead and the way you live out your day-to-day life?
Well, I think at its very foundation, it's knowing that there is a God and he isn't you.
Mm.
I think once you have that down pat, that you're here to serve and not be served, that it makes it easy, as a matter of fact. And look, I wake up in the morning, and I've told my kids this for years and years, wake up in the morning saying, how am I going to make somebody else's day better? How am I going to serve someone today?
Mm.
Not who's going to serve me, what's going to happen to me that's going to be great. It's how are you going to help? How are you going to serve? And I think a lot of that came, or that realization for me came once I had made the decision spiritually to follow Jesus, because for a long time, I kind of wandered in the desert for a while, kind of thinking that I was all that and that everything was about my job. But that really opened my eyes. That was back in 1997. So I think once you realize that you have a purpose here, and the purpose is not for me to be a TV star or make sure that everybody knows my name. No, that's not it. But you're able to use that platform for a greater good. And so I think that's something that I learned way back in 97. And here's the thing too. It's like, the date of what I call my, folks say, hey, what's your spiritual birthday? Was December 10th, 1997. And so my wife would actually get me a little present every December 10th. Oh. And one of those years she got, I have a visual aid here, as a matter of fact, Graham. She got me this compass. And so I said, well, isn't that interesting? And she wasn't there when I opened it up. But there was a little note with it, and it said, remembering the day you found your direction. And that was powerful. Yeah. And so now it's like, I always tell myself, check your compass. How are you doing? What direction are you going? Are you getting a little sideways? Are you getting off path? So it's not only was it a real moving gift to get that one day, but it has been, it's been great to go there on a daily basis. Check the compass. How are you doing? Where are you going?
Wow. That's such a good reminder. That's just to keep things in perspective. So important. And especially in the day and times that we live in, there's just so many distractions out there that can easily pull you away from your true purpose.
No doubt.
So staying within your book, Unscripted, you've got a quote. If there's one thing life has taught me, it's not to fear the unscripted, but to embrace it.
Yeah.
Can you talk just a little bit more about that quote there?
Graham, I could talk for the next 4 hours about that, but I'll keep it short in the interest of your listeners. So here's the deal. Like, a lot of times you feel like you want to live a script, or the script that other folks write for you. And so for me and my wife, Cheryl Ann, it was like, we got married back in 82, had a son in 84, had a daughter in 87. So we're like, this is the script, husband and wife, good jobs, a boy and a girl. It's like, don't mess with the script. And I think that every now and then you got to go off script, and not play it safe, and so Cheryl had the idea in the early 90s after watching ABC News 2020 about the Romanian orphans. And she said, I think we need to go get one of those kids. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Do we really want to tinker with what we have going on here? And the more we talked about it and the more we explored it, we decided that would be a good idea. And Cheryl went to Romania while I watched the kids back in Atlanta. And 2 months later, she came home with a little boy named Michael, who is who was really in tough shape. He was nearly 3 years old. He couldn't walk or talk, just made noises, had all kind of stuff wrong inside. And then once we got him back to the States and had him to the doctors, he was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. And so then you're kind of like, now, this is not exactly the script that all those folks were writing for you when they said, oh, boy and a girl and great jobs and great wife, you got it made. And now we were faced with something. I know a child with an incurable disease. A lot of kids don't get out of their teens when they have Duchenne muscular dystrophy. But the time we had with him was so rich. So we don't run away from the unscripted moments. We embrace them. I mean, here's, for all of his limitations, you talk about seeing value. In high school, there was a coach who wanted Michael to be on his basketball team. And I'm like, Coach, he's in a wheelchair. It's not a prop. This guy's not going to get to the gym and drop 30 on somebody. And he says, I just want him to be my 5-foot-tall impact player with no vertical leap. Because Michael had this tremendous spirit. His favorite thing to say was, love you too. And so, again, I said I'd try to make the story short, but there's no way to shorten part of this. But so Phil Beaulieu was this coach. And so Phil has him on the team. And Phil, seeing the value that Michael had, would explain to some of his classes. He'd like take the last 5 minutes of class and say, I want to tell you a story about this guy named Michael Johnson. And he would tell the story. And he said, I know a lot of you kids go up and down the hallway here at the high school using sign language. And a lot of times it's a middle finger. And the kid's kind of like, yeah, you're right, Coach. He said, well, let's learn a new one. Let's learn this. It's I love you. That's how you say I love you in sign language. And so he's teaching his kids this and telling them about this orphan kid from Romania who couldn't do a whole lot but had tremendous value. And so senior night, all the seniors go out and get a blanket with a high school, Mill Creek High School logo embroidered on it, their name and their number. When they call Michael out, he drives his wheelchair up there to center court. And, people give him a round of applause because he was kind of like the assistant coach on that team. And I looked up in the corner where the student section was, and they were standing like this.
Wow.
And if you don't think that was powerful, this coach who came from Indiana down to Brazelton, Georgia, connects with this Romanian orphan in a gym in Brazelton and teaches this high school about love. That's a God thing.
Absolutely.
I could, to me, it's like, well, how do you come up with that? God says, well, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah.
And so it was just one of those things that points out to embracing the unscripted, because we certainly didn't have a fatal disease in the script, and seeing the value, which Phil Beaulieu saw, and acting on it. So it's not what you can't do. You got to have the eyes and the vision and the heart to see what somebody can do and let that shine.
So powerful, man. That's so powerful. So still continuing to talk about Michael for just a second. And that story is probably so deeply moved so many people. He's still impacting so many people today. So what did Michael, and it's probably, what all did he teach you when it comes to compassion and patience and leading with love? It's just, I'm sure you could go on and on, but just what are some, when you think of, I don't know, I got chills right now just hearing that.
No, Graham, it's interesting too, because, folks would say, oh, Michael is so lucky that he's got you guys, and it's like, we're so much luckier. Because, like, one of the things, when he's in Romania, he's got nothing. All right, he comes over here. He can't do much, and he's got nothing. You take him to a McDonald's, and he would love it.
Mm.
And then you drive by a Burger King 5 minutes later, and he starts crying because he wants to stop at every place because he's had
Wow.
so little in his life.
Yeah.
And he was a great example to our kids, the kids that we had biologically, Maggie and Eric, because they're saying, hey, his message to them, unspoken, but just by his very existence, was, look, it's not all Toys R Us. It's not all, fast food and Happy Meals and seashells and balloons. It's a real struggle for some folks.
Right.
And so he taught us that, and he taught us to be happy with what we had. That we, the thing that he was fixated on cars and lawnmowers when he was a kid. And he had this crazy memory. Like, he would remember that forever. You told him what you drive and that kind of thing. He could tell you 10 years later, he'd tell you what you were driving. And one of the things he just loved was if we would go to a car dealership and get brochures and look at the pictures. He couldn't read or write. But if you went through the book with him, you could tell him what they were, and he'd never forget.
Wow.
And so, and then we would laminate pictures, cut out the ones that he wanted, laminate them. Next day he'd get them out. He'd say, throw them away. I want to do it again. And it was so bizarre, but it was like, it didn't take much to make him happy. And I think we can all learn from that. And as he got older, he had a real serious bout with pneumonia. He went on a ventilator, and he was on a ventilator for the last 11 years of his life. And he died at 33. And I will say this about when you have him in your household and you got to do everything for him, it puts you in a servant mentality from the get-go. You wake up in the morning and say, okay, I'm going to take care of him. Not today and not tomorrow, it's every day. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And so to serve is a great thing. And then to witness the impact he had on folks with his spirit. Now, he did a lot more for us than we did for him.
So good. Thank you so much for sharing all that. What an impact. So one thing I appreciate about you and just watching you and following you and broadcasting, you're very authentic. I feel like you're very open about life's challenges that we face, you face, everybody faces at different times, from health battles to your personal faith. How do you balance just being in the public's eye a lot? How do you balance being so vulnerable, but also responsible of being that steady voice in the public's eye a lot, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I'll go back there. It was a strange thing. ESPN did a piece on me and my family back in like 2015, because they knew about Michael. They knew about, run-in I'd had with cancer, and they knew about my dad and our relationship. And so Jeremy Schaap wanted to do a story. And it was crazy because back then, ESPN doing a story about a TNT guy, was like, really? And Cheryl and I really had to talk about whether we wanted to do it. And because there is a very private part of our lives where we would just, we'd like to be left alone and, kind of just do regular stuff. It's not like Shaq and Charles who can't go anywhere. That's not the
Right.
case with me, but we do want to kind of keep a lot of things to ourselves. But we figured if people will learn something about adoption,
Mm.
about the father-son relationship, about caring for a special needs child, if doing this story will teach some folks about that, then let's do it.
Mm.
And so we opened it up. We opened up the house. We opened up Michael's room to what we do to get him ready, all of that.
Mm.
And the reaction to it was unbelievable. I mean, the reaction to that story is what prompted me to write the book, and so that was a life-changing episode for us, the decision to do that story for ESPN. And I think, we could have stayed quiet, but if people are going to learn from something, and it's like when I had cancer back in 2003, it's like got on the air and told folks, here's what I'm going through.
Mm.
I've got these, I've got lymphoma. I got these swollen lymph nodes. It's making me look funny, but I've got cancer. We're going to handle it. I think you face those things straight up, and what's amazing is the support you get.
Right.
I mean, folks pay you back. I always tell people when I speak to companies and that kind of thing, look, one of the things I want you to do is hit the send button, because everybody, Graham, knows somebody who's been touched by cancer or something else is going on in their lives. And too often we say, I really need to reach out to that person and let them know that I'm thinking about them. And then 6 weeks later you say, you know what? I really need to reach out and tell that person. But I can tell you right now, firsthand, from being in those infusion chairs, getting chemo, and opening up your computer and you see messages from somebody who hit the send button, changes your day. And so that was kind of a meandering answer to that question, but wanted to get that out there too.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. So a couple questions as we get ready to close. What lessons do you hope, when you think about your life and your career, what lessons do you hope future broadcasters or even future athletes, maybe young kids that are watching, what lessons do you hope they pull from watching you and how you carry yourself?
You know what? It's one of the things I get great joy in is going back to my alma mater, the University of Georgia, the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communications, and being able to speak to the current crop of students. Because back in the day, I was one of those students. And, we would have guests come in who were in the business, and you just pepper them with questions. You wanted to know everything about what you were about to get into. And the same thing happens with me now when I'm in those classrooms and I can talk to those kids. And it might sound, of course, hard work, but I stress that. You got to be the hardest worker in the room. And you have to, as my dad said, be yourself. And so I think, the value of preparation is something that I stress with them. And not being afraid to put in the time and the work at some place where it's not where you want your career to be, because we're kind of in a microwave world now where somebody wants to be the next voice of the LA Dodgers and they say, hey, it hasn't happened yet and it's been 6 months. It takes time. So I preach patience there, patience and preparation, and the willingness to do what needs to be done. So your hand goes up before anybody else's, and you're the hardest worker in the room. Yeah. And those are the things that I tell them. And then there's no guarantee that's going to take you exactly where you want to be, but that's what's worked for me. And never taking anything for granted, and always appreciating the job you've got, and always doing more than you need to. When I think about preparation, 90% of the stuff I prepare before a show never makes air. But man, when some of that stuff does, it makes you feel real good.
Right. Hey, so being a University of Georgia grad, I'm sure you and Barkley have some good conversations, Auburn versus Georgia.
We do, as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
Nice, a lot of friendly wagers, as a
uh,
matter of fact. And
I bet.
on
I'm Auburn
the
fan
football
myself.
side, it's been all me lately,
Oh,
believe
for
me.
sure.
Uh, but
Yeah.
one of the great things you know, we have a little financial bet on the side, but
Mm.
usually there's something else we have to do. So one year I said, Georgia wins this game. You got to sing "Glory, Glory to Old Georgia" on the air.
Yeah.
And I still have people who see me out and say, "Thanks for getting Chuck to do that. That
That's
was the
awesome.
best." So
Yeah.
yeah, we both take great pride in our universities,
Yeah.
and yeah, some of the best years of my life
Yeah.
uh, in Athens.
So I want to ask you one last question, and this is a little off script. So there you go, unscripted. But lead full circle. One reason I started this, being in the school systems, is I've been an educator for 18 years, and now as a principal, I deal with a lot of families, and unfortunately, a lot of broken families. And when I've seen a lot, not all, but a lot of the broken families, I deal mostly in those situations with the mothers. A lot of times the dads are absent or just not present like they should be. So say we've got a struggling dad out there that's just different, just going through some very challenging times. What advice would you give to that man, that father, that husband, to not give up, to stick with it for your family? What advice would you give to that individual?
Graham, I get that question from guys a lot.
Mm,
Just you know, it may be the work family balance, that kind of thing.
right.
Like, man, I'm so busy. I'm so slammed at work. I don't have time for this, or I missed this. And I've been there. I have been there, and you feel like pulled in a couple of different directions. But I always tell them, look, um, you just have to be. You have to be intentional. Sure, there are going to be things you miss. Sure, there are going to be moments where you wish you had handled things better. For me, it was always like missing games. My dad was a baseball broadcaster. He was gone most of the summer. He missed
Mhm.
a lot of my stuff. Um, but I think if you're intentional about it and you can adjust your work schedule enough where it's like, I'm going to get to work on this tonight because that will give me a little bit of time Thursday morning where I don't have to do that. Maybe I can take my wife out for lunch. Maybe I
Mhm.
can go to school and see my kid when they're having, lunch with the kids or in a field trip.
Mhm.
Those are the things, you know, kids, kids have superpowers. They see and hear everything.
Yep.
And so they see how you handle situations with your wife. Um, they see how you are when you're in the grocery store in a long line. They see how you are when you're caught in traffic. They see and hear everything, and they remember moments where you went the extra mile, where
Mm.
you said, "Look, I know I'm busy. I know it's a work day, but man, I had to give you a half hour." They'll never forget that. So I
Mhm.
think being intentional is the is the biggest thing. It's just you have to make the effort.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes it requires moving the chess pieces around a little bit, but it's worth it.
Absolutely. Well, Ernie Johnson, thank you so much for today and just the few minutes you gave us. Just these 35 minutes, I'm going to go back and rewatch this several times and take notes and apply it to my life and my leadership style. And just, I appreciate you so much. And thank you so much for taking time to join us here at Lead Full Circle.
Graham, thank you for the job you do, man. I appreciate it. My oldest daughter, Maggie, is a teacher at Buford High School uh, outside Atlanta. And both of my sisters were teachers.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know what happened to me, but you have my utmost respect, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you so much.